My name is Alicia Hopkins, and this is for my community ambassador. Um, my this is for my name's Alicia Hopkins, and this is for my community ambassador interview about communication, AAC, and support decision making. Today, I have with me Mike from Portage County and Don from Miami County, and they're going to have a conversation with me to talk about communication, support decision making, and alternative forms of communication, things like AAC, accessibility, like with Braille and ASL and support decision making, and a lot of other things. So I just want, just alternative forms of communication. So, um, okay, Dawn, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself? Just like a short, like who you are, and just why it's important to include people that may communicate a different way, or like need things in a accessible format in conversations about support decision making and communication.
Um, think okay. So, hello, thank you for having me. My name is Dawn, and yes, I am from Miami County. I am a disability advocacy consultant. That means I have worked with organizations and different people in the disability community to do different things, such as helping provide recommendations on best practices for accessibility. I help people learn how to use their technology, such as their iPads or iPhones. I help, and I also have helped people learn how to read and learn Braille. And I think it's important to I think it's important to allow people to have access to things in different formats and communication strategies because everybody deserves to have a seat at the table, no matter if you are disabled or not, and no matter what disability you have. But sadly, that does not happen as often as it should. And that's always my goal is to change that.
Thank you. How about you, Mike? So can you tell us a little about yourself, and like about why it's important to be accessible with our communication and have a way for you know people to communicate, and um also be involved, people that use alternative forms of communication to be involved in their and in their own decision making.
Hi, this is Mike, and I'm from Portage County. Been blind since birth, and I also work at SIL, the Center for Independent Living. So accessibility is very important because how are we as blind people supposed to get things in alternative formats, not only in Braille, different file types, audio, any type of thing. So with that and communication is key. Details are important because a lot of times we as blind people I'm gonna be honest, Dawn here is also helping me to see details as being very important and teaching me a lot. And I've heard of what is it, the AAC, the Augmentative Alternative Communication. I've
Yes.
heard of it,
Yes.
and um, it's important for like say if people are nonverbal, it gives them a voice, which is critical. And I also think that these, the different types of, different types of tools should be available. At when I look at it, people with disabilities should not have to be paying for this kind of stuff. Should be, insurance and things like that should, a lot of things should be. Hey, because we as people with disabilities, a lot of times we don't have that much we don't have that kind of scratch. A lot of times, because society puts too many barriers up. So this way, we can get stuff to help us out without us having to pay for everything, because we got to pay for all the because we got other kinds of stuff we got to use our money for, this and that and the other thing.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. So do you know what? So I'll ask each of you. Do you know? Have you heard of supported decision making or know what it's about? Dawn, could you go first?
Yes, I have. It's an alternative. It can either be an alternative to guardianship, or it can be used in conjunction with guardianship, and it's it's designed, well, I guess designed is a better way to put it, to be able to be tailored to whatever individual is using it and their needs and their level of support. And it's a way basically to keep it, if you are not under guardianship, it's a way to avoid it. And if you are under guardianship, it's a way to still have choices in your life regardless of that.
Thank you for sharing. How about you, Mike? What is your take on supported decision making?
Supported decision making.
Yeah.
If I look at it, like what Dawn said, it gives the it gives control to the person who has a disability. It is about them. Guardianship, from what I understand, takes the control away from the person with the disability and puts it on somebody else. So this way, the person who is using supportive decision making, for example, say Sally has different types of disabilities or whatever, and if Sally's under guardianship, and if she doesn't know anything about supportive decision making with whatever's going on in her, whatever's going on, it's like the person who is Sally's guardian. If if the guardian almost is basically making decisions for Sally, and that doesn't always work out. Not always. Sometimes it does, sometimes it don't. But with supported decision making, then it's up to Sally, with help and everything or whatever. Sally gets to make the decisions for Sally, and under supported decision making. And even if she is under guardianship, this way, supported decision making is definitely is how I want to put it. It's 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 a better alternative. So that way, the power is back to Sally. And say if Johnny and say same thing with if there's same thing with Johnny, because if it's with Johnny, then Johnny can make Johnny's decisions.
Okay.
With with help and everything.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. So, my next question, you hit on earlier, Mike, about the, what AAC is, the augmentative alternative communication. And so I want to ask you both, have you ever seen or interacted with anyone who uses an alternative form of communication besides speech, like ASL, American Sign Language, picture exchange communication cards, or ASC, or we can even include Braille. I mean, I'm sure you have in degrees, but can you talk about what it's like being in, like, maybe like the different advocacy groups or communities where people use alternative ways to communicate, and is it accepted, or is there a level of interaction, or is there challenges that you see happening? Can you speak to that first, Dawn, and then Mike?
Yeah, sure. So I have interacted with somebody that uses alternative forms, and I will say sometimes I have used alternative forms myself, including Braille, to do that. Or I will type things in Braille and then it gets automatically translated into print using a Braille display hooked up to my iPad or my iPhone. And whether I'm in a Zoom meeting or if I'm sending a text message or an email or something like that. So I will do that. I have sent letters in Braille before. I've done that too. And just had a print copy with it. So if there's challenges to it being accepted, oh yeah. I think some people in spaces are more accepting of it than others. And I think some people, it's almost like some people don't want to provide alternative formats until you basically wave the ADA under their nose and basically tell them, look, you have to do this. I'm requesting these accommodations. This is what I need. And I am finding though that sometimes people are helpful if you open your mouth and ask, but more times than not in advocacy spaces, people aren't. And that really does need to change. In Ohio, this is a very huge problem, and this really, really does need to change.
Thank you. All right, Mike, the same question for you. Um, like, have you ever interacted with people who use an alternative form of communication? Like, just what has been like for you, um, and for you and other advocacy groups, or what have you seen and heard the challenges, for people that use alternative forms of communication, whether it's AAC, Braille, or ASL, what is the communication breakdown look like?
I'm also with Dawn. I haven't seen it as much as she has, but I do know this has been, at least almost 20 years ago. There was there was a young lady who was nonverbal, but had some kind of a device where, of course, that was 20 years ago. Was not it wasn't nearly as advanced as it is these days. Seems like, but she was able to type out what she wanted to say, this and that and the other thing. And I also think, with speech synthesis, the way it was back in then, the way it is these days, it's really improved. It's really good. And I still think that people who a lot of times who are in the situation where how they want to put it, that outsiders, like those of us, who are verbal, a lot of times, not me, but I'm just saying, in general, if a person is not used to synthesized speech, almost like they look at the other person or whatever, as if they're, sometimes, outside of the disability community, it's tougher to do. But I think also with people with disabilities, we've been around synthesized speech and things like that. Because now with ASL, how can I do that? Can't see what they're doing. Braille, you have to know how to read this. You have to know how to read Braille in order for them to understand what's going on. Now with texting, that's also another way of doing it. For example, mom. For example, if he since mom is she has a cochlear implant, so she has reading lips is another way of doing it. And so she can have people text her, before texting, how could people communicate? There's technology is right out there, and it's steadily improved thanks to people like us who have disabilities saying, "Look, we need this," and so I'm getting at. So people also, I think that people with disabilities usually, from what I've seen, are more likely sometimes to embrace AAC. Those of us who've been around it, we encourage it, because that way, hey, everyone has a seat at the table.
Exactly. So I know I've interacted with you guys, both, Mike and Don, both. I've interacted with you many times, with my AC, and I guess, like, I would like to know, how do you like how do you like feel when I interact with you with my AC, knowing that I do speak some, but also, like, how do you I mean, you've always been accepting of me and everything, but, like, what have you seen, like, me or other people with WSAC go through in terms of, like, being included in advocacy spaces when on days I use my ASC?
Oh boy. So I'm gonna step up to the plate first on this one. For me, it's just when you or somebody else is using their AC and they do speak to me, I don't want to say it's just another day at the office, but it is, because they're still speaking. They're just doing it a different way. And whether it's because they have to, or, because something is going on that's preventing them from speaking for whatever reason. And I have seen people in national spaces are usually more accepting than Ohio spaces. And I have seen a very stark difference. And I have also seen it where people look at you like you have three heads whenever you mention alternative forms of communication or AEC, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I've seen it, and I don't know if it's a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, or an unwillingness to learn, but it is very hard to get that kind of acceptance in some spaces more than others. And I've seen quite a bit, but if you're around people, but I have seen also just being around somebody, if you care about them enough, you will accept whatever form of communication or forms that they use. And that's how I see it in a lot of ways.
All right, thank you. How about you, Mike? So, like, if you're as you're interacting with me, who's, as I know you've interacted with me as a person that uses ASC intermittently and everything. Like, how is that, like, interaction, like, seeing that, and how is it seeing how the disability community, um, react to it, or just advocacy spaces, like, the same question I asked Don, but a little more detailed. Can you answer that for me?
I haven't really been around it as much as Dawn has, but I have the same. I have the same reasons as Dawn does. Give them a seat. Give them the seat at the table. Let them be let them be a part of it. So I'm with Dawn 100%. So
All
I
right,
haven't
thank you.
really, like I said, I haven't seen that much of it as she has, but I'm with Dawn 100%.
Okay, thank you. Don, do you believe that when people have the right tools, accommodations, and supports, they can best communicate and make their own decisions in life?
I most certainly do. Everyone communicates, processes, understands, etc. in different ways and at different levels. Just because someone isn't verbal or doesn't communicate, understand, etc. in the same ways we do or expect, that doesn't mean that they can't communicate, have needs, wants, etc. They do. In my experience, especially in healthcare settings, nonverbal people get ignored or they walk into a room and walk out again. So, like, I have a story about mom when she was in the hospital and she still couldn't talk after her stroke. After her stroke, she couldn't talk for 9 days. She would push the button whenever she needed somebody. She would push the call button for a nurse, and they would pick up the phone and they wouldn't hear anything, and they would just put the phone back down. And one day somebody walked in and she's like, "We're a little busy right now." And dad basically had to tell him, "Look, she is nonverbal. She cannot speak. So if she pushes her call button, you guys need to come in here and figure out what she needs." And they were okay when he was there, but when he wasn't there, it was hit or miss. And I, oh my gosh. So I, that's just one story. I could tell you thousands of stories from a bunch of different chapters in my life when about this, but I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you for sharing. How about you, Mike? Do you believe that when people have the right tools, accommodations, and supports, they can best communicate and make their own decisions in life?
Absolutely. They have the
Thank
right
you.
tools. Yep, absolutely.
So, what tools or technology do you use to help you communicate in advocacy spaces? Dawn, you can go first. And
Okay.
also, for how about can we ask it as this: what tools or technology do you use to help you communicate in advocacy spaces or to help you make decisions in your life?
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I had to take a drink of water. I use my iPhone or my iPad in my Braille display, which I hook up to both devices via Bluetooth. Sometimes I use the Zoom chat, but oftentimes I have a hard time using it because of the fact that I use voiceover, so that can make it a little, that can make it like trying to navigate a obstacle course and having to do it while standing on one foot. I use email as well, so I do use that. That's just kind of a snapshot of some of the things that I use in advocacy spaces as well, or outside of them for communications.
Okay, let me ask you a follow up thing. Would you say that like without these tools that you would have a challenge to be included in your community in communication and everything as well?
Most definitely, because especially Braille, I went through a period of 4 years where I did not have access to Braille, and that was very tough for me. Every time I've had to get my Braille display sent in for repair, which has been twice now, it has always been very tough. If I did not have Braille or, my Braille display for my iPhone and my iPad, there is a very good chance I would either have to step down and step back from a lot of the things that I do in the spaces that I'm in, or I just wouldn't be able to take on as much as I can with the communication tools that I have, but especially Braille. That's a huge cornerstone, and it has been a huge cornerstone in my life for 26, 7 years, give or take.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Mike? Can you tell me, like, do you believe that when people have the right tools, accommodations, oh wait, sorry, wrong question, Mike. What tools or technology do you use to help you communicate in advocacy spaces, and what would it be like without them for you if you didn't have them? So what's it like with them and without them?
I'll say this: without internet, that is must to have the internet, for example, because everything goes along with it. Cell phone, computer, braille display, JAWS. Without any or all of them, I'm sunk. So they really make a big difference. If we use them, I use it to help. You know, I could talk and everything, but I'll be honest, writing, getting this stuff out of my head a lot of times, no matter if it's talking, writing it out, because I'll be honest, I suck at writing. I admit it. Always have. Well, like always will. I don't know. And so a lot of stuff, I'm here to tell you, Dawn is really good at getting stuff out of my head. She knows how to explain stuff better than I ever could. I say that publicly with no apology. And so, Dawn, you're good at that. You're good at getting stuff out of my head. So keep it up.
Can I ask you another question to follow up, Mike? So on a daily or weekly or monthly basis, how do you make things more accessible for others as a person that works at an independent living center, but also you're trying to find a way to put things in an accessible format for the community that you serve?
All right. When we have our newsletter every month, what happens is one of the colleagues puts it in an accessible format for me. This lady, she will put it in a Microsoft Word document, for example. She'll put it as a Word document, send it to me. She and I will go over it. I'll read it on my braille display, which is an absolute must, and everything. So what we'll do, we'll read it over, and then once we're satisfied to, have it as we want it, I will record it as an audio file, edit it down, send it to my colleague at the office. She'll put it up on YouTube on our YouTube page. Also, I send it to the to our local radio reading service station that is available for people who with print disabilities who basically can't read print, and so I make it available to them, and they put it on their schedule, whatever they put it on, that people can listen on the radio. And then obviously for my people I work with, who have CD players, whatever, I make make it on CD for them, and then I also make it as available at alternative text, like.
Well, I appreciate the work you're doing to make information and content accessible for everyone, because
Accessible, exactly. What
no,
I try to do
I
is I try to.
guess.
That's just an example I use. This is a newsletter. Make it as accessible as possible for everyone.
Well, that is a great thing, because you're making content accessible for all people with disabilities. But people with disabilities to have a way to hear it, and if they can't read it, but also like if they need an alternative format. So this is very important, because everyone communicates, but everyone also needs like information in an accessible way for them. Do you know that the hallmark of supported decision making is giving people extra time and plain language information, and providing people information in a way that they can understand it? So, with support, to be able to make, informed decisions, or to be able to understand things, and I think that the work you're doing is truly important, because you're providing people, real time information, but you're also making it in a way that it's accessible to more people. So the next question I have for both of you is, um, do you feel that the advocacy groups or like spaces in Ohio have like made information like accessible to you in a way you need to communicate? And also, do you think that information about supported decision making has been put out in a format that is, good for the blind community, but also, plain language information, for people to actually understand the information about supported decision making? Can you both answer that, Dawn first?
Oh boy, I could talk for hours on this one. So, the short answer for have people done what they could to make things accessible in advocacy spaces? No, they have not. It has mostly fallen on to me or my really good friend Mike to help me make this stuff accessible because they either didn't know how to do it, they didn't want to do it, or whatever the reason is. And I, if I didn't have that, I would just have to muddle through, make it work. And I had to do that for a long time anyway. And I finally said, I've had enough. And I stepped away from certain spaces for that reason, being one of them, because it just got so crazy. But as far as supportive decision making, I really don't think that accessibility has gone into that. I think they've done great at making materials and they're doing good at making materials and things, if you're but a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing is in PDF format, and PDF is, it may stand for portable or picture digital format, but see it as, I call it picture digital frustration, because they don't play nice with screen readers, and unless you know what you're doing, you can't make, it's not really accessibility best practices to have a PDF. You need to have something else, an alternative to it. Plain text is optimal. And some people, they just don't know how to do it. I've seen people where it's like, Dawn, can you teach me how to do this? Or, oh, well, how can we make this accessible for you? I'll send you a PDF, and no, can you do it this way? Or I'll say, if they can't do it that way, can you give me a DOCX file, or can you give me an RTF file? So it's it goes into, so meeting people where they're at, and if they can't do something, then if another option works, then great, but if not, then oh my. But yeah, people need to make SDM related stuff more accessible, and advocacy groups, especially in this state, need to do a better job than what they are doing to make their stuff accessible, from what I have seen. And the ones that do, I'm going to give a huge public hat tip to them and say, you are doing a great job. Keep it up.
So would you say that we've left like communities behind in making information accessible about supported decision making, um like just about, in an effort to communicate for the greater good of about the conversation? Would you say we have left like the blind deaf community behind, and also those who use AC
Oh, yeah,
and that need plain language?
I do. I do think we've left a lot of people behind, either that or we just haven't thought about them, because a lot of times I've brought up accessibility, and they're like, we've never thought about that, or oh, we didn't know about that. And so that's a huge part of it, is you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know till you know. And then when they know, then that puts the ball in their court to say, oh, maybe we should do something. And then if they don't do something, then that's on them. But we've left a lot of people out, just not only in the way that supportive decision making is implemented or used, but also taught, and outreach, and just we've left a lot of people behind, and that really does need to change. There is no excuse for it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that information is more written to families versus like people that may need plain language information as well. I think that that is another barrier. It's more written to families or people that are incredibly involved in self-advocacy, but there's no middle ground. So how about you, Mike? Would you say that do you like would you say that we've left people behind, when it comes to accessibility about, supported decision making, and what what do you think that like we've the same question I've asked on essentially. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree 100% with what Dawn's saying too. She sees it more than I do, but I'm in full agreement that a lot of times it's not only, how can I put it? It's a lot of times anymore. It seems like people, um, have multiple disabilities, so they're gonna need multiple things. And yeah, we've left, we as a state and even as a society in a way, it's like we as people with disabilities have to adapt, and we have to show other folks what we need. And sometimes it's not as easy as it looks. It is not easy to do that. Sometimes it's practically impossible because if we don't have the tools and if we're not shown what to do, how are you supposed to get stuff done?
Yeah, I
So
agree.
I'm with 100%. I'm with Dawn 100%.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if the information isn't accessible for you, how are you supposed to understand it and also be involved in smart decision making? Like you have
Right.
to fully understand it. And I believe that, when we give people the right tools and supports that people can thrive and understand content and be, active decision makers in their own life. Everyone communicates. I like to say that, instead of saying someone's nonverbal, I like to say a person's non-speaking because even
Makes sense.
people that don't speak, some they may use alternative ways to communicate. Like for me, in my lifetime, I've had life experiences where when people don't see me speaking, they think I might not have something to say, or this extreme opposite for as when I do speak, but then I have difficulty speaking, people might assume like have a misunderstanding about me and my ability to use AAC and things like augmentative alternative communication has been a game changer for me, but I also need things that are in plain language information about content to be able to still process and make decisions. And I'm up there with you about needing the tools but not having experiencing not having the right tools and an accessible format. That's always been a challenge for me and stuff too. So my another question I have is, do you think that Medicaid should cover assistive technology like AAC devices or other speech generating devices? I feel like Braille could even be considered a speech generated device because it gives a voice to the blind community. So do you think that Medicaid should cover like assistive technology that helps people to communicate?
Absolutely.
Yes. And
Absolutely.
I'm going to take the floor on this one first.
Okay.
Um, I think they most certainly should. And I definitely think that we should hold them to task to make sure that they do this for several reasons. One, there's a long list of conditions and disabilities that can cause loss or impaired speech or otherwise affect speech. Therefore, a justification can and should be made that a person needs this due to their medical condition. And two, if you start looking at prices for AT, whether it's AAC or another type of AT, one thing will become very crystal clear very quickly. Whether it's a piece of software or a device, it's expensive and unaffordable for most people and their families, including myself and my family. A lot of times, there are no payment plans available, or if they are, it still makes things out of reach. These companies can get away with this for two reasons. One, it's legal, and two, it's a niche market, and they're the only company in town or the only supported company in town. Not only that, but if you have to get a device repaired, you're screwed, to put it politely, because the cost of renewing a warranty can be outrageous. For instance, my Braille display manufacturer wanted $800 to renew the warranty on it, and now they're telling us we can't even get a warranty on it due to the age of the device. And for perspective, the last time we had to send my Braille display in for repair, my family had to pay $2,500 out of pocket. And the cherry on top, if we didn't respond within 90 days, we forfeited the device to them. So they should not only cover the devices and software, but they should cover any devices, including repairs.
Thank you for sharing that. How about you, Mike? You know, do you think Medicaid should cover assistive technology like AAC devices or other speech generating devices, or in your case, you know, Braille displays or Braille generating devices?
Absolutely.
So there is
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. Keep going. Sorry about that.
That's what I'm saying. Absolutely, because how that's just one form of cover. That's just one form of coverage. Because if Medicaid ain't gonna cover everything, if there's a way that now, on the other hand, okay, we as people with disabilities, we got to work for everything. If everything's handed to us, okay, I'm also going to play devil's advocate here. All right, if you don't work for something, and if all you have, and if you had everything just handed to you your entire life, do you appreciate it as much? If things are just handed to you, you don't appreciate the hard work that goes into something or other. If you don't work for it yourself as well, and like I say, I'm playing devil's advocate here. But if you get the stuff, you know what it takes. We as people with disabilities, we still appreciate what we do. At least we should. Because hey, without it, we're screwed. So I also think that hey, most, because from what I understand, I don't know what the true percentage of, for example, us blind people. We, people with disabilities, a lot of like us blind people, for example, we are the most underrepresented people. Not just blind, but other even with other disabilities along with it. You don't see as many blind people working as you do other people with other disabilities, because we are a low incidence population. Supposedly, the statistic that's thrown around is at least, I want to say 30% of people who are blind, vision impaired are actually employed. So you figure that's 70% of blind people who are unemployed, who can contribute to society. All right. And even society really puts a lot of barriers up, and it's hard as all get out to fight those things.
Yeah,
but,
I think. Oh, sorry. I'd say.
Yeah. So with the technology stuff, yeah. Are there ways of getting it? Getting it paid? Yeah, there's ways, but not every way is. For example, okay, I'm going to throw something out here. For example, opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities. That's a sore subject in a lot of ways, because it's like, if you're not working, they're not going to touch you with a 10-foot pole. And even if you're not in the working world, or whatever, as people call it, you're screwed. So how are we supposed to Medicaid, whatever, or whoever, hey, cover this stuff? Not and there's not always going to be grants around. Grants are hard to come by. You have to have reasons for why we need this stuff, and I don't really know I don't know all the details and stuff like this. All I know is, hey, you need this stuff in order to survive in this world.
Can I kind
In other
of
words,
jump in a little
go
bit?
ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I want to kind of piggyback on something that Mike said about OD. Even if you are working, that doesn't necessarily, working can mean many different things to different people. So, for example, if you're self employed, or basically, as they put it, if you don't have a quote unquote traditional form of employment, they're also not going to touch you either. And also, if you use something for business, work, and home, so for example, like Mike uses JAWS for personal and for work, OD is not going to pay for it, even though he uses it for work, simply because he also uses it for personal use. And I'm kind of facing that same thing too. But yeah, so they, who are they to decide what's traditional and what's not?
So I just want to say, like, I think now, I think it's important, one to, say about the OD comment is, I think it's important to acknowledge that, there might look like there's resources and supports there, but there isn't always those resources. But also too, bottom line is that having access to the right services and supports and tools we need do help us communicate better and to be active in our communities. But there are just really clear gaps in Ohio for both AAC users and people with, who are blind or deaf, in our communities. And there just really isn't accessible content to help people understand, things like support decision making, or even just understand, the rules about programs and everything. And so they can make informed decisions. I think that people can make informed decisions when they have the right tools, and they come in an accessible way. And so I think that that's something that we must work on and raise awareness on. Ohio is that people are being left behind, based on the way they communicate or what their communication needs are, and the lack of accessibility in our communities. And we really have to work on that so that people can be included, can be a part of the process, and and communicate, because everyone communicates, but we need more people spaces to be more inclusive, right? Do you agree?
You're
Absolutely,
preaching to the
100%.
choir.
All right,
Yep.
thank you for your interview, and thank you for your time. Don, can you stop the recording?
Yes, let me go in and try and